Now we would like to welcome the moderator for the first session, Dr. Yan. He is from the China University of Technology. He will start the first session on behalf of the organizer. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Yaning Yan from the China University of Technology. There will be two keynote speeches today by Professor Lucy Morissette, as well as Mr. Hildebrand de Boer. As we tackle the effects of globalization, it has created sparks for waves of discussions regarding cultural and industrial heritage conservation and adaptive reuse. It is our tremendous honor to have this opportunity to introduce the two keynote speakers. The first being Dr. Lucy Morissette from Montreal, Canada. She currently teaches at the University of Quebec in Canada. She is a professor in the Department of Urban and Tourism Studies. Most importantly, she will be the host of Tiki 2022. In 2017, I went to the University of Carleton in Canada to attend the CETA symposium at Carleton University.
It's very not so easy, and congratulations for you can host such a very big event and share all the knowledges to us. 今天这个
Professor Lucy Morissette will talk about a very important topic, which is the industrial settlements and the various implications. So we will be playing a pre-recorded video.
You may start your presentation. Thank you.
Non, ben moi, je suis attachée à Arvida parce que mes racines sont ici, évidemment. Je suis née ici. J'aime la ville. J'aime l'air qu'on y respire. J'aime les gens. J'ai grandi en toute liberté. Alors, pour moi, Arvida, c'est un modèle de ville. Je ne pourrais pas rêver mieux. Je pense que ça, on s'en défera jamais. Tout le monde. Et une personne qui est d'Arvida pour la vie. Donc, je pense que ça ne pourra jamais changer. C'est assez terrible, hein?
Dadya, how?
I dress the streets like the palms of your hands, and I walk your name. You've always been easy to find behind the haze that swallow these nights.
I want to discuss with you today about a specific dimension of industrial heritage, that is workers' settlements, more specifically workers' settlements built around factories by the private sector, mainly in the 19th and the 20th century, although I will focus more here on the 20th century and on a lesser-known heritage, that of what we call the Second Industrial Revolution. I want to discuss that heritage in a specific perspective, that of deindustrialization, of the closing and of the disappearance of these industries from the Second Industrial Revolution, disappearance and closings that are causing large areas of land to be just abandoned, destroyed, dequalified, together with large areas of the history and, more important, of our collective memory. I'm calling this discontinuity in the line of Peter Drucker, an American economist who in 1969 published a book entitled The Age of Discontinuity, Guidelines to Our Changing Society. I will not go in depth with Drucker's thesis. Let's just retain here that he's describing a change from a society based on the production of goods through industry to a society based on the sharing of information through digital technologies, for example. And that change is also modifying deeply our societies, our cultural memory, and what we feel is common, what we feel is shared in communities or in mankind. What I want to discuss here is the interest of what I call company towns or modern worker settlements, of course as industrial heritage, but also as a lesson of what industrial heritage can bear in this age of discontinuity, or how can company towns teach us to produce meaning in this age of discontinuity, and what they can teach us about heritage in general. So first, what are these company towns that I'm referring to? It could be, for example, Nord-Pas-de-Calais mining basin with more than 30,000 workers units registered as a World Heritage in 2012. Could be Ashima in Japan. I'll get back to Ashima briefly. Could be Shiofen here in Taiwan. These are often specific and self-contained communities, as South Hedland in Australia, or this one, Arvida in Canada, on which I will come back later. That was entirely built for the workers of an aluminum factory. Now, these settlements, which we call company towns or workers' communities or workers' settlements, were indeed quite important in the development of the West, especially since the relationship between work and living place in self-contained communities, especially since that relationship is not that common in the Western world. But they do exist in most parts of the world, especially for those created in the 20th century by large multinational companies that were seeking resources further and further away from established cities and hence needed to house their workers in some way. They had to house them even more that workers had become much more mobile than in the 19th century and could easily switch from one company to another if their working and living conditions proved unsatisfactory. So these company towns of the second industrial revolution were pretty much experiments into making cities livable and creating belonging in communities. Now, you see that here that our inventory in this part of the world is quite incomplete due to language and cultural shifts, and that is why we expect to launch a collaborative initiative on which I will come back in a moment. Some of these company towns, as that town of Arvida that we just saw, some of these company towns even invented the housing formulas that were later on borrowed by public authorities when governments started to be involved in housing, which, as I said, came particularly late in the 20th century in Canada and in the US, among others. It is there in Canada and the US, but also in Europe. It is there that the second industrial revolution made people dream of changing humankind and making humanity better thanks to the massive production of goods. It is what had French architect Tony Garnier dream of a very large industrial city that would carry that promise, which he called La Cité Industrielle. The industrial city, as a matter of fact, La Cité Industrielle, that would change the face of Earth thanks to hydroelectricity, planes, and wealth to be redistributed among all the workers. The idea of a utopia is indeed not new, and as you know very well, in English, the word itself, utopia, was imagined by Thomas More in the 16th century precisely to describe a place where humans would live together in peace and harmony, freed from the slavery of social classes and of social distinction. In the 20th century, while CEOs became more distant of their production sites as company grew multinational, the idea of worker settlements stayed in that path of providing a better living environment in order to engender a better society of workers. That is where the practice of urban planning kicked in, as it developed mostly during and after what we call the First World War. Urban planning and knowledge on housing planning became central in creating communities with a sense of belonging that would stabilize the workforce. That gave way to a very dominant movement of the urban planning history in the West, the Garden City, which you would know obviously, especially the Garden City with single-family homes. Urban planning could thus and should be seen as a legacy of industrialization and thus should be claimed as industrial heritage, especially as it grew out of company towns and plant workers' settlements. Urban planning is an offspring of industry and of industrial history. And even more, the quest for new and better settlements went to the point where they became the trademarks for some private enterprises like Cadbury in the UK and Hersheytown in the US. This is how all these settlements came to colonize whole continents and how they became in many ways interconnected with each other, creating a realm of shared experience, a globalized experience of being, as it was recognized through ways of living in workers' settlements and company towns. A globalized experience of being the root of this world based on the production of goods. So that is the legacy. Communities of people that were forged by their relationship to a specific work that gave way to a specific kind of settlements and towns with factories, of course, but also with housing, community buildings, and so on. And that gave way to a global network of shared experiences, of valued experiences. These industrial settlements, together with the workers' housing, form a very, very important part of the Western experience of the world and of the development of entire countries as Canada, as Australia, as the USA, and most Europe in the 20th century. And these company towns are more and more recognized as the heritage and included on the World Heritage List. As in Rjukan, Norway, as you can see, these settlements are much more frequently formed of detached or grouped houses than of apartments. These settlements are, in fact, a new trend, if I might say, a new trend in the industrial heritage and in the world heritage in general. And that is, although while we know quite a lot about the heritage of the first industrial revolution, we know much less still about the heritage and the cultural memory of that second industrial revolution. That is now a problem because it is these settlements that are now massively threatened by closures. Yes, yet we have learned to manage as heritage the closed settlements of the first industrial revolution. We have made what they call in France the Château de l'Industrie. And although industrial heritage still tends to awkwardly focus on plants and factories and machines and other monumental things, we are beginning to see some small open-air museums of workers' settlements preserved as artifacts. It has to be noted, however, that this heritage is mostly that, artifacts made of relics. It is not a coincidence if most of the pictures that we can see are without people in them. So, where do these people go? What is their part in this destiny of their community. So as far the state of the workers' settlements nowadays, we can differentiate between those that are still active, like in their first days, as in Cabramurra, Australia, or as it was the case actually, as this was badly burnt down by the bushfires in Australia in 2020. That is indeed another aspect of our changing world of discontinuity, adding to the fact that here as well, the town was scheduled to be closed down in 2018 to be replaced by a fly-in, fly-out facility. This replacement, this is what happened to Sparrows Point in Maryland in 2014 when the steel company that had built the town decided to leave and leave nothing behind. Most of the time, as you can guess, company towns of the second industrial revolution are falling down with the industrialization and the reorganization of the society nowadays. This, as you know, is actually the state in which Ashima in Japan was registered on the World Heritage List. Kangaroos are the last inhabitants of Wittenoom in Australia, and deers in Ayoko, Canada. Some old factories are turned into museums, and some settlements are reused and developed as heritage parts of the cities. But most of the time, all this industrial memory counts for very little in the redevelopment of cities, and all the utopia, all the historic experience, and all that was once the brand, the trademarks of entire districts just makes place for new branding. That industrial heritage tends to exclude the people in the communities, and while the redevelopment of cities often targets themes and other figures of urban branding, at the same time, some places are left in a very bad need of a source of growth, as we see here in North Carolina, where all the industries closed. You still have the workers' houses, but all the shops, all the schools, all the commercial activity have vanished. Where is there to belong to? What is there to belong to? What is there to share? That is because, as most old or grand heritage, say as the Château de la Loire in France, industrial heritage is largely targeted at tourists. It is the case even more as it is believed that tourists will bring back in the revenue lost with the industrial closures, and by giving employment to the unemployed industrial workers, that tourism will restart the wheel of economy and thus society. We now know that this utilitarian vision does not work. Industrial workers will not take on some jobs in the tourism industry. Moreover, economists have shown that the promise of jobs does not suffice to convince workers to move from their former company town to somewhere else, as the attachment to the past shared experience counts more to them than an uncertain future elsewhere. We know now that society does not follow economy. Economy follows society. Now, these working people were once at the center of this industrialized world. These working people were just set aside. That is actually when we mainly started talking about the working class being a condition of suffering. Through losing their global networks, their shared experience, their value, and now their environment, they became a residue, barely a memory. Deindustrialization scholars talk about displacement to describe some causes and effects of this transformation of society, as centers or production are displaced to different parts of the world, which in turn creates displacement among the workers. But it might be said for the working people living in former company towns, or even worse, for working people ejected from those company towns, it might be said that they are living a double displacement, a displacement from space as their global network of experience fades with the closures, and a displacement from time as their relation to the material and symbolic environment is no longer a substrate for the future, but a residue of the past. And so the whole deindustrialized world is left to its decay, with all its utopian content and a very large portion of the territory as inhabiting this territory, as I've shown with the company towns, as inhabiting this territory was precisely the core of the 20th century industrialization. So can these former utopias, these settlements created with an identity and a society project, can these find a new way of life through heritage? Can tourism be a part of it, and if so, how? Even more, can these workers' settlements also help us to learn about the ways to manage heritage? How can this help rebuild the societies and the economy left over by deindustrialization? It is in that line of thought that we have come to work with heritage as a relationship, as an initiative parallel to the heritage made solely of relics, and as a way to involve the communities in the destiny of their settlements. We're actually proposing to switch the industrial utopia that gave birth to our workers' settlements to a heritage utopia, to a society project based on the idea that heritage could make the life of people better. It is this project launched in the 1990s, but that has quite intensified since 2009. It is this experiment that I would like to submit briefly to you now. Now, this project is twofold. On the one side, it acts on a global scale, and on the other side, it acts on the local scale. It acts, indeed, as industrial heritage here is viewed as an agent of transformation, an agent that can recreate the community in space and time, and thus bring back to the deindustrialized communities of the company towns, bring back their place in the world and their place in history. The global side of the project, which is also the more recent, is based on the spatialized humanities. It is a deep mapping initiative of company towns, that is, of the scientific knowledge about them, about their history and their architecture, for example, but also a mapping of the popular knowledge of their day-to-day living, as we can restitute it through oral history and through direct participation of the users to the mapping, thanks to its intuitive interface. This is still very in the building phase. The idea here is to support a global rebuilding of meaning through the collection of historical data, including archives, pictures, etc., and oral history, all localized, so accessible from the user's point of view and situated in time with timelines, and this on deep maps, which are actually meta collection of our own data with reference to existing data in other places of the web, of course, and most importantly, with data shared with users, inhabitants, for example. The idea here being both to assemble and produce knowledge and to value the experience of the people, to switch their nostalgia and their displacement to a new position in history. In other words, the idea here is to convert residue into something that can bear experience again, and that in its initial phase, at least, that rests first on knowledge. We have to know more on company towns and of course on the rest, but company towns are, as I said, at the center of this disappearing world. So the point of this experiment in deep mapping is to support knowledge and knowledge development, and at the same time to support a new networking, a post-industrial networking that puts on a global scale the experiences lived locally, that localizes again the experience of industrialization. The idea here is indeed to recreate pride by replacing the displaced communities in our shared experience of the world. To illustrate in parallel what can be done locally with this specific case of 20th century company towns, I will take briefly the experiment of Arvida in Canada, a community with which I've been working for the last 30 years. Arvida is situated almost just below here, below Taiwan, below where you are, if I might say. It was a full-blown, as we might also say, a full-blown industrial utopia. An industrial project which became an urban plan, a plan for a city, that the city that you can see here, and that became a society project built to foster the belonging and the pride of the inhabitants. This has meant building around a gigantic aluminum plant. This has meant building thousands of houses intentionally designed to be different one from another, together with numerous community facilities, schools, and so on. More specifically, the society project here was threefold. It was intended to create a community through architecture and landscape, to create a community by fostering the belonging of people through home ownership, seen at the time as an alternative to social control, and to create a community through a shared experience and the production of a collective cultural memory. It is this link, this threefold link, that we are working to reactivate nowadays through the relationship between the people and their heritage. And as Arvida was once at the center of the world because of its aluminum production, the Heritage and Tourism Project nowadays aims at regaining belonging and a sense of pride, including on an international scale through a listing as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Arvida encounters the same situation as elsewhere. Although its plant has not closed and will not in a foreseeable future, modernization has greatly reduced the number of employees, and new people moving into Arvida do not share the common memory that has defined the society project here. The industrial project is not the sole social project in Arvida anymore. To summarize, Arvida is in a situation of discontinuity as other deindustrialized places, with a changing and mobile society with no more shared experience and less common memory. But in 2009, heritage was placed at the center of a new society project by a newly elected alderman. Since then, the project that we have been conducting with the municipal and state authorities follows three main ideas: to maintain the continuity of the legacy through the preservation of the built heritage in order to sustain stability, but also in order to rebuild the pride and the belonging through a recognition coming from the outside. But also, at the same time, to maintain that continuity and enhance the community's experience through diverse measures designed to reboost pride and belonging amongst the inhabitants, including their participation to the heritage narratives, as we see their experience of life in Arvida, especially that of the older Arvidians, as we see and define it as an integral part of heritage. And incidentally, to use tourism as an agent to sustain a better commercial offer to the present and future inhabitants of Arvida, but mostly to build pride. So this went through a set of usual measures that you're familiar with as legislative protection of the built heritage, restoration of heritage and landscape, coordination of stakeholders, new and specific policies and bylaws, design of a tourism development scheme, and so on. I will not go through all this here as it would take much more time. Tourism itself was seen here not as a new source of revenue, but as a new source of pride, as I said, a new source of pride giving value to the shared experience of the past. The tourists who eventually come to Arvida do not only want to see the relics, especially as the heritage is mainly formed of active buildings, landscapes, and houses. These are actually the urban tourists who visit urban settlements and who want to take part in their life and everyday activities. So tourism development has to manage heritage and the urban scape by providing equipment that will be shared between the inhabitants and the tourists. More specifically, heritage and tourism development have to build an interface, a contact zone between inhabitants and tourism so that the tourists feel that they are sharing the experience of the inhabitants. In order for the heritage to take place in that mechanism and to act as a new development dynamic for the whole community, tourism was seen as a tool to integrate heritage into each and everyone's life. That is how we came to work on cultural memory in order to renew the inhabitants' relationship with Arvida and to integrate heritage in everyday practices around the skating rink, the hockey arena, the pool, the church, and so on. Thus, we aimed at enhancing the value of being an Arvidian and even of becoming an Arvidian, for example, through public exhibitions, on the sidewalks, on the internet, public exhibitions of the life and work of some Arvidians. This was actually the launch of the Memories of Arvida project. As a matter of fact, each dimension of what I am showing now is a project of its own, as the new policies are a project of its own, the tourism development scheme, and this Memories of Arvida project. Now, I have to say that it has become quite common to interview old workers, for example, in industrial heritage development. It was not that common when we launched this project, but what was even more uncommon was to consider the whole community's everyday practices as an intangible heritage. To this day, we have conducted close to 100 interviews. It may seem very few, but it has to be said that each of these interviews can last for 2 to 3 hours and do need some kind of expertise of the topics discussed in order to help old inhabitants to communicate their experience.
De l'école Saint-Joseph, qui deviendra par la suite, sous la direction des frères de l'instruction chrétienne.
So we're just a very small team of 2 interviewers with 1 cameraman and 1 sound taker. And we try to recruit these among the local young professionals to stimulate their own interest in these narratives. So anyway, it is a work that needs patience, but one that is also very taking, as it is urgent considering the age of the people we're interviewing. All these interviews are then edited to be viewed by anybody on a public website, which promotes the idea that the people's shared experience are to be considered equal to the heritage experts' narratives. And this led to a parallel project in retirement homes and hospitals, sharing the same path, but dedicated to enhance the value of the person in the community and in the eyes of his or her family. We count here on 2 facts. First, that the memory of Arvida as a planned community as a company town with a society project, that the memory of Arvida is so strong that it stays in the mind of people even when they are affected by cognitive loss, which has proven to be true. And second, we are counting on the fact that the growing recognition gained by Arvida way beyond its frontiers gives value to the narratives of Arvida and thus gives value to the person carrying and sharing these narratives. It does seem much more human anyway to entertain the elders by valuing their cultural memory than by having them play bingo or poker or whatever all through the day. And Arvida is, in fact, as I was saying, is in fact regaining its name and its social recognition outside the municipality. More and more people find Arvida desirable to the point that the real estate values are increasing and that all inhabitants nowadays know perfectly the architectural model of their house and its history. Arvida is of course a test case, but I do believe that it can help us think not only of how to make heritage or how and why to preserve workers' settlements, but how industrial heritage, when it is considered through the lens of a society project, how industrial heritage can help us build sustainable communities nowadays. And together with the global deep mapping project that we expect to officially launch in the upcoming year, I believe that it can help us master better how industrial heritage, as a very specific and still quite uncharted field of heritage, how industrial heritage actually has the power to overcome the discontinuity of our world, to go beyond that discontinuity that has left behind that industrial world based on the production of goods. As a matter of fact, what we can do with the industrial heritage of company towns as living environment, if we are to address this heritage as a human phenomenon and not only as a collection of artifacts or residues or relic, what we can do with this heritage of company towns shows us that while we are moving from a society based on the production of goods to a society aimed at the sharing of information, heritage is at least as much a good to preserve than it is an information to be shared. But if we want both of these aspects to survive the present time, we need precisely to reinvest the living environment that they are, to reinvest their functionality with meanings that can support the pride and the big belonging of their inhabitants, of the working people, as the company towns used to build the support their pride and their belonging, both on a global and on a local scale. In order to do this, we need to, of course, develop our knowledge on company towns and workers' settlements. We need to address industrial heritage, especially in company towns, to address industrial heritage as an agent of belonging and pride. And we need to think of heritage maybe less as good to be preserved and surely more as an information to be shared. That is, if I might say, that is what we could call industrial heritage reloaded, but that is another story. Thank you all. I hope to welcome you in Montreal or in Canada soon.
Oh, I see the echoes crown your helmet without sparks. You say it out loud, you dream about fate.
好，我们谢谢。
Thank you to Professor Lucy Morissette. So she talked about a deep mapping project. So this is also a new digital humanity method. She also talked about long-term investment in these projects. She also mentioned that the using industrial heritage as a way of change, and I think that echoes with the 2023 ECMOS theme, heritage change. What kind of change should be made? And what should be the theme of change? I think people are all thinking about what kind of change can heritage bring about. So now I'm going to welcome our panelists. Professor Xiaowei Lin, Department of Architecture of Zhongyuan Christian University. She's also the chair of ANI. So let's welcome our panelist, Professor Xiaowei Lin.
Very much for organizer Professor Yan and Professor Lee's invitation. So I'm very honored to be the panelist here. And secondly, I would like to thank you for Lucy for her very informative and very rich presentation. And so here are my response. I think because I would like to have a more communication with our local audience, so I will speak in Chinese. But I think Lucy, please bear with me. I have an English presentation for you on the screen. Okay? Yeah. 所以刚刚
I think in Lucy's presentation, she mentioned one very important point, that is the company village. So I think the first company town in the world that includes life, production, and social welfare, everything is included in a company town. So the concept of company town was born. My first research was on Newmark of the UK. So that also brings back a lot of memories of myself when doing my research. So when she talked about discontinuity in the company towns, I think in this time, the time is not continuous. So despite the discontinuity, how can we change that into continuity? So Lucy talked about rebuilding continuity. That is, we need to focus on the connection among people. So she talked about 2 projects. So the first one is, excuse me. Whoops. So you can see that my feedback from her speech is that how does the utopian concept of company town to be regenerated, and how can that drive local regeneration? So there are 2 projects. So Professor Yan also mentioned that digital mapping can be a useful method. Through comprehensive research and investigation, we can conduct research on all of the company towns around the world. So actually, there are a lot of heritages. For example, in France, there are settlements for coal mines, and also some towns in Italy. All these are world heritages, and they're wonderful examples of company towns. So from these company towns, we can see the setting left from the industrial background in the past, and they can be used as the driving force for further development. And I think that also echoes the cultural governance concept here in Taiwan. We hope that heritage can drive the reorganization of people's life. So that's a very important concept. And second, industrial heritage as an agent of change. I think this is also a very important concept. I think a lot of people here are familiar with this idea. So, for example, there are some prominent examples like rural area or Arvida, a company town known for its aluminum production. After falling down, these company towns face the common issue of unemployment, and they need to come to terms with the reality. working on heritage is not enough. They also need to try to connect people's memories, and they try to evoke people's emotion and pride in their communities. So industrial heritage is an information for sharing. That's the third area. That is how we can share the pride of the locals, the history. We have a lot of people here are doing this. For example, we have the coal mine area in Shifen, and people are facing similar issues. We hope that the industrial heritage can be seen as the relics of local memories and how we can connect that to the new lifestyles so that we can connect with the contemporary life. And I think that's a very important area.
Some idea about Taiwan's company town and company village, you can include in your deep mapping project, perhaps. Okay, 所以在台湾也有很多
So here in Taiwan, we also have a lot of company towns or company villages. So this kind of concept started in the UK and then Japan and now in Taiwan. So for example, we have the sugarcane fields. We have the sugar company or factory or the dormitories or accommodation for the workers, and that also drove the mining industry as well as the development of the railroads. So in the deep mapping project, it shows that the researchers are trying to build the global network. Through this kind of comparison and learning, we can see when other peoples are doing the research, what's the content, what's the way forward. And I think this is a factory still running in Taiwan. It still has manufacturing. So you can see the train moving. So this is indeed a rare example. That is the company town that is still in operation. It's a pity that the company town do not have so many people living in there, but we still want to regenerate this area in the future. So when we talk about the factories and so on, so you can see the map of Taiwan. All these company towns or villages around Taiwan are quite many. So you can see based on sugar, we have already so many factories, not to mention we have a salt industry, forestry.
I want to do some research. 非常欢迎他来做。
So Lucy, you're more than welcome to come to Taiwan to do some research and have more exchanges with us. So I think that concludes my feedback to Lucy's presentation.
Lucy's excellent presentation and with the vivid video. It's really, really nice. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Lin. I think Lucy's presentation and Professor Lin's feedback have told us that this is an ongoing research project. We certainly hope that there will be more cooperation among all of us due to the time constraint. Now it's 3:05. Let's take 5 minutes. Let's take 5. We want to stick to the schedule, and when we come back, we will move on to the second keynote speech, and we also want to welcome Lucy to stay with us and to listen to the second presentation. So once again, thank you to Lucy and thank you to Professor Lin. Thank you. Thank you very much. Due to the time constraint, so now we're going to take a 5-minute break. We have prepared some desserts, refreshments, and beverages outside. We want to remind you that please do not bring the food and drinks inside this venue. Thank you for your cooperation. We also have prepared the mugs, so please do not use the paper mugs. Thank you very much. See you soon.
文化部文化资产园区致力于台湾文化资产保存及再生，是文化资产典藏、研究、展示、教育的生态基地。园区作为文资政策推广平台与文化资产培育场所，全方位地推动台湾传统艺术、传统工艺传承计划，培育文资专业人才，打造文化资产培育的专业基地，要让有形及无形文化资产永续相传。首创文资传教工坊，成为传统技术工匠人才能力培训基地，希望透过老师傅经验传承，让传统技术得以永续。文资为体，文创为用。文化部文化资产局不定期规划文化资产为主题的展演活动，促进大众对文化资产的生活参与，同时落实文化保存于民众生活。公开的展演让民众参与文资学习与体验，更能够深入了解文化资产背后丰富的社会及文化意涵。利用现代科技 AR、VR 与360度环景摄影技术、数位模型等，进行文化资产调查，跨越时间与空间限制。文资园区借由文化资产结合城市发展，创造出文资共生共荣的种种愿景。从保存在地知识与传统智慧，让有形无形文化资产以不同的意义重新回到当代社会当中，维护台湾文化的多元性。培育文化资产人才，建构文化资产守护网络，强化维护文化资产治理能力。园区渴望成为传统修复技术培训。
大家午安。
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. The International Forum will resume in a few moments. Please return to the auditorium and please be seated. The second speaker will be Mr. Hildebrand de Boer. He is the founding vice president of the European Route of Industrial Heritage. And the moderator will be Xiaowei Lin. She is the chair of ANI and associate professor from Chongyuan Christian University.
Conference 好，大家好，今天非常开心有邀请到那个
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the forum. It is a tremendous honor to have invited Hildebrand de Boer. He holds very important position in e-commerce and Tiki. He is the founding vice president of ERI, the European Route of Industrial Heritage. We have heard a very interesting presentation by Professor Lucy Morissette. A lot of people ask, now we've done so many studies, we have made so many efforts, what is the next step or steps? How do we take it a step further? How do we expand the possibilities of industrial heritage? To answer these questions, I would like to turn the program over to today's second speaker. But before I do that, I would like to remind you that Ms. Hasti Tarakat will comment and provide feedback on Mr. de Boer's presentation afterwards. Ms. Hasti Tarakat is the co-chair of ANI. She is an expert in industrial heritage in its research and conservation. She is the founder of Heritage Hands-On and Sumatra Heritage Trust. Without further ado, I will now turn the program over to Dr. de Boer. Please go ahead.
Very much. Thank you very much indeed. I think it is a magic that we can meet each other, and that is thanks to all our industrial revolutions that we are connected now on this way on such a huge distance in real time. It's fascinating. I think in the 16th century and 17th century, we needed about 3-4 months from Amsterdam to sail to Taiwan, and now we are just live together, and I'm very grateful for that. I also would like to congratulate Lucy Morissette with the Arvida project and the community there, and hopefully they will have a successful UNESCO World Heritage nomination in near future. I know it is a big procedure, and it takes very much efforts to reach that point, but you have all chance to do that. I have also, and I will really say that, a very good remembrance to Canada, because I visited the Tiki conference in 1994. That's 27 years ago. And that reminds me also on the fact that you're getting older and older. It's unbelievable. And you are not to be careful, you will be history yourself. That's the problem. But today, I don't think that, and I'm happy to be with you and with the younger generations, Taiwan and of the Asian Network of Industrial Heritage. I prepared a small presentation, and I will switch it on now. And we will have a look if all the techniques will help us to do so. And the only thing I ask now to the directors of this conference, can you see it? Is it in? Is it now there? I will have a look. This is. Excuse me for a minute.
Mr. de Boer, would you like me to display the slide for you?
Yes, I just asked you. I put. Oh yes, that's. Oh, I see. I have to share it. Yes, there we go. Yes. Hopefully you receive it now.
Yes, we have it. Thank you.
Oh, that's great. Then we start. Wonderful. Even kijken. from the beginning. There we are. Yes. Is it? Yes, you have it. Wonderful. I would like to talk with you a little bit about, I think, an almost, in my opinion, holy trinity between validate, sensitize, and celebrate in relation to industrial heritage and industrial culture. That's what I would like to present you in the next slides for the next time. And I see validate is, you could say it is the way of determining historical value as objectively as possible. That's not really a funny way of working, but it is a task of government to do so, and for conservationists in this government to be active on that. It is a serious matter, and I started in that field in 1983, some time ago, for the government of North Holland. That's the province where Amsterdam is part of. And we started with conservation of industrial heritage in that area, which was not done before. It was the start of a new policy. And I experienced how important it is, first of all, to do that, to evaluate the heritage you have in your area, and then to protect it by law, and also to enforce protection. This is the basis of this holy trinity, I would say. When that doesn't happen, we will have a lot of parties, but we will also lose a lot of essential heritage which we should not lose, and which we should keep in our society. It was a nice time, and I would like to show this example of an industrial area near Amsterdam. And I can tell you, this is what it looks now. It is beautiful, I think. You might like it even as much as I do. But it would not have been there when this policy, which we started to execute in the beginning of the 80s, would not have been there. It would have been destroyed. Every building would have been destroyed. It is now nobody anymore would like to think 1 minute about destroying what you see here. But it was 40 years ago. It was, if we don't use it anymore, we can destroy it. We can put something different there. It was a concern not only of province of North Holland. I give you now some examples from the Netherlands, which you could also see as examples from Europe. The the Dutch state, said we have to do something about this protecting. We have to protect essentials of industrial heritage. And then there was a document, as you see here, and the title is The Industrial Heritage and the Art of Destruction. And that was a very teasing subject. We said the art of conservating the right thing. That was in fact what it meant. And we worked in this, and I worked for this office from the state as a project of 4 years, and then we gave light to all the industrial branches and for a balanced protection. You could say it is easy to save more cuddly brick constructions of industrial heritage, but we have also more touchable features like chemical installations and things like that, and it is very easy to destroy them without even trying to protect them. And that is what in the Netherlands, and I think in many other parts of Europe, has changed from the 80s until now. Also, industrial landscapes, the scale of industrial landscapes came into attention, kind of protective attention through the spatial policies, which made it possible to be very careful also with these areas. It's not easy, but you have to do it. Another aspect was the importance, of course, of adaptive use. Lucy Morissette also spoke about that. And therefore was made this brochure in 1995 from the state for it was called Old Factories with New Functions. It was the title, and it was just there to convince the industrial community of the value of the heritage where they are taking responsibility for. And of course, another aspect, and that was really new at that time, not so long ago, but it was completely new for 25 years ago, was to acquiring public support for what was done in this field. And that was done in an easy way, just to say that the year 1996 is the year of industrial heritage in the Netherlands, and that worked very positively. It was a great success. People visiting lots of sites, and that is in fact coming to the aspect next to protection is the aspect of sensitizing communities and people, acquiring public support by sensitizing them. And I think that's the second pillar of this trinity. We see always here very great examples of that in the Ruhr area, where in Germany, where it was done already also in the 90s with very big actions to after the huge economic reconstructions in that area to give people a new power. And I made a picture of this shield there it was in the city of Duisburg. And there you see in the nice, wonderful German language, Sonnenaufgang in der Region. It is the sunrise in the region, which meant that, we have gone through difficult times, very hard times, but now we feel that we are us again, and as important as we were, as in the times of the huge coal mining from the 19th century onward. So the new self-respect was coming into the region, and that is the most beautiful way of sensitizing. I think we have learned a lot of what has been done there in the Ruhr area. It was, of course, to make that accessible for the people. There was built a network of industrial culture in the Ruhr area, which is still active and actual, and which will be that also for the next decades. It is functioning very well, and it's giving people access to the history of their area. It's not only tourism, it is more, I like to use the word visitor, because in such a regional network of industrial history, the most visitors come from the area itself. I think I don't know exact the percentages, but I think it is about 80% at least of visitors from the own region and 20% from outside, which you could call tourists. On the basis of what was happening in the Ruhr area, and I would like to say something about that from the Erie point of view, and because we are colleagues, Erie and Ani, we feel, of course, very tied together. I would like to show you something about this history, because that started already in 1999. We started to build this network, and we presented it in Duisburg, the city of Duisburg, in 2001. It is our nostalgic pictures, and of course on location in industrial plants we did. And then in 2008 we had the honor to found the area association in the city of Essen in Germany, just on the World Heritage site of the colliery Zollverein. And you see, this was the core of Erie at that time, and a core of magnificent people who, most of them, still are very active in the field. Some aspects of this network I like to tell you about, and that is, I think, personally, I'm like very much the aspect of regional networks in Europe about industrial culture, which are connected with our European association. And that are meanwhile 20 just over Europe. Here in Germany we have already 11 regional networks. Germany, the activity is really very, very big. And you see some examples here of very important areas. Ruhr area, Berlin, of course, Brandenburg, that's the area around Berlin, and then Hamburg and Frankfurt, major cities in Federal Republic of Germany, and also other areas in Germany which are disclosed for a broad public. The same you see in some other European countries, for instance in Austria, Luxembourg, and in Poland, a wonderful network also in Poland. It is great to be there. Hope you will be able once to visit that also. It is fantastic. But also meanwhile in Spain, fascinating networks have been active for the people. And of course in the United Kingdom, two very amazing networks which are active there. And in the Netherlands, we have one in the Amsterdam area, and we are building one now in the east of the country and the western part of Germany. So that's bilateral. That is a really fascinating thing to do that and to go over your borders. Another aspect next to the regional networks are anchor points, the most, as we consider it, the most, not only the most important sites of industrial heritage in Europe, but also accessible sites for the public. That is also always very important. An anchor point of Erie is a site which is broadly accessible for the people, and they are marked with signs, as you see here. This is the unveiling of a sign of anchor point in one of the anchor points in the Netherlands. But that's not all, because, and I think it's mainly fascinating to see what a rich reservoir of industrial culture we have in our continent, and you will surely have also on the Asian continent and in America. It is amazing to see that we have discovered about 2,000 of these points of interest of industrial culture which you can visit all over Europe, and they are accessible through the website of Erie. So when you come to Europe and you visit a certain country, you easily can find out where you can visit important industrial heritage. Then next to that, and I think it's nice to be complete in this case, we are interested in themes. And of course you do not make a physical route in Europe on a certain theme, textiles or coal mining, that you would have to drive too far. It is an idea to see it is also our networks, thematical networks, which make manifest which different kinds of industry are and have been active on the continent. To be honest, also important is also to see what specific histories have these countries in Europe. And these histories are also written down and are accessible on the website of Erie. And there are already histories of 48 European countries in it. And I can tell you we have let's say 52 European countries. So we are almost finished with that. And it is huge. It's very important to know that, because even the tiniest countries are given presence in these histories. And of course, these histories are also concerned with the industrial branches to show what is the way of these industrial branches into now and also into the future. And I think at last, biographies of important industrial entrepreneurs and important innovators of industry. We are giving the floor on the website of Erie. And for instance, a famous man like Friedrich Engels, who came from an family of industrial entrepreneurs in Germany, in the area near Düsseldorf. 187 are now manifesting it, and that will be more in the future. When we go on with our over Europe, we have our roadshow with an exhibition about aspects of industrial culture and also about the regions which are very manifest in the area organization. And we have, of course, activities for members, for instance, to reach each other. We link Europe, we're linking sites with each other which have things in common in different countries, so that people start to work together. And we have a focus on, of course, young generations. And one of the projects for them is the yearly Work It Out dance activity on about 30 to 50 different industrial sites all over Europe, where in the same choreography and music, there are performances which we combine together in video films. Wonderful. It's really wonderful to see that on very special places. And for us, it is, of course, important to monitor, and therefore we have an industrial heritage barometer. That is an instrument which yearly is refreshed, and every year we ask the important industrial heritage sites to give answer on a questionnaire about visitors, kind of visitors, and all things which are along that the way they are able to carry out their work. And in the last 1.5, 2 years, that work has been a little bit more difficult because of the pandemic, which also was in Europe very active and still is. So that had a lot of consequences, of course, for our members and for the sites they are active on. Every year, next week is the next assembly of ERI. Every year we have an annual assembly of the association, and that's very serious, and it is also very fine and very nice, and with a very great atmosphere. That's so nice. I think you might experience the same in Asia. Those colleagues who are involved with this wonderful topic of industrial culture, they are all happy. I mean, they are happy to do that and happy to meet each other. So it is great to meet each other. Next week in Ghent in Belgium, we will have this annual assembly, which I could also call like an annual serious party next week. And so we tell our European industrial heritage story, which is truly international. Industry is, of course, an industrial phenomenon, and is for Europe very important because it is bringing Europe together. These developments in all these countries of the Council of Europe and of the European Union, all these countries have similar, more or less similar industrial histories which come together, which bring countries together. And it is, as I could say for Europe, it is unity in diversity in Europe. We have a unity in industry, but we have diversity, for instance, in the many languages which are spoken in Europe. And that is a fascinating cultural heritage too, and that we bring it together. And for the Council of Europe, this is already almost 10 years ago, but it was an important moment in the Parliamentary Assembly. There was a statement about the state of industrial heritage in Europe, a very important document where we worked on you see this working session here on this picture. And it was good because the Council of Europe is containing all over Europe. Almost all countries in Europe are a member of the Council of Europe. So this Parliamentary Assembly and this document which you see here, which was published on the 15th of February 2013, gave not only the state of the art of industrial heritage in Europe, but was also activating, giving a notice about what has to be done in Europe to maintain the values of this industrial culture. As I said, this unity in diversity is a reason for Creative Europe. It's a program of the European Union to work together with the European root of industrial heritage. And we were able to grow bigger thanks to the European Union, thanks to their involvement since 2014. And the period is still running until next year, and we hope also that then after that year our work together can be continued. It is we have many chances that that will happen. And then I come to the third part of this trinity, and in my opinion, a very important part, because we start very serious with protection and with enforcing protection are very serious things that lead to very serious contexts, and it's not always funny to do that. Over the sensitizing of the people and let them experience the values of their own area, of their industrial history, which is their own history and also their own future, come to the third pillar to celebrate that, to make a big party of this, and that is to make it important, make it important. And we have been celebrating heritage in Europe, especially in a year which was called after that, the Year of European Cultural Heritage in 2018. That was also very interesting. It was, I think, directed by European Union on a fabulous way, and it brought us together. And it was stating also the importance of it, and especially also the importance of industrial heritage. Here you see one of these fantastic meetings is in Berlin. In Berlin was a week full of conferences to share values, European Cultural Heritage Summit. And here you see Mr. Steinmeier, the president of the Federal Republic of Germany, giving his speech. You can see that the issue was coming at the highest level you can think, and he was talking about industrial culture on a very empathic way. I think that's the right English word. And that made it important. Also from my own country, from the Netherlands, you can say it has come to the highest levels, the industrial culture, and that was not only symbolized but also actualized by our king and queen, who visited Saarland. That is a part of the Federal Republic of Germany in 2018, and that was also a great statement. And on this picture you see in the middle the Queen and the King and the president of Saarland and the director of the Völklinger Hütte, and that's a World Heritage Site. There, I would like to tell you about that. We had a tremendous a conference with a small amount of people coming from the Germany and the countries around, which the area, so to say, around Saarland. And in this on this conference, we prepared the visit the day after, the working visit of the royals, and there we discussed with them some topics. I will tell you which these topics were, and I think these topics are not only interesting for Europe. Of course, the European unity and diversity, as I spoke about, which is the basis of our industrial culture, but also the aspects of the first industrial revolutions and the spreading over the European continent, the aspect of work by the clock, as we call it, which is so different than in the agricultural period when you worked with the seasons. That is what we spoke about, and that is changing this relationship with clock and industry as it does with the interaction between humans and machines. That has also been analyzed, and also what happiness means. You might imagine that our industrial products, not all of them, but many of them gave a lot of happiness. And but you get used to that. There are coming new things anytime. So what did that happiness mean in connection with industrial development in the past, and which could it mean in the present? That's what we spoke about, and it was a very inspiring celebration of industrial culture. But we celebrate in every section of the population nowadays, and in many industrial weeks and industrial weekends and industrial days all over Europe, which are every year organized. For instance, here you see a picture of the industrial week in the Amsterdam area, which will be in 1 month ahead in October. It is a tremendous way to reach the people, to reach the population of your region, and to show them history, but also actuality and future in relation to industrial culture. That is a combination, you could say, of industrial experience, what we show, culture and enjoyment, and that makes it so tremendously fine and important to do. That means that we are yes, we will move towards towards the future with new heritage, and that's therefore also the young generations are so hugely important to be brought to this topic. There will be new assignments for valuation, new assignments for awareness and celebration. And I really speak to you, dear audience. Your part is you are historians or urbanists, or architects, artists, policymakers, visitor marketeers, etc. Your role in the future is hugely important because you could say the future is history. The future will be history, and that history will be important for the future. That is exactly, I think, what it is, and therefore we are in a continuous process with continuously upcoming new generations which are having to deal with, for part, the same issues as the older generations deal with or have dealt with, but also with new challenges which only you can perform. And therefore, I will be, as a little bit older person, very grateful to younger generations that they do so. That's good. And I hope to experience that for a long period of time ahead, what is happening in the world and in Europe. Then we come to the almost last slide, and that's of course an invitation to you all. I hope you will once be able to come to Europe, or you have already been there. That is possible too, of course. And then I hope you will be in a situation like this to celebrate the industrial culture, as it is done every year in the Ruhr area, or the last evening with a big firework in Duisburg at the um, at the blast furnace plant. Fascinating to see that, and that gives a very special feeling of happiness and gratefulness to join that and be there. I thank you very much. I give now the word to my moderator and my dear friend Hasti Tarakat. We know each other from the ECOMOS organization in the Netherlands also, and it's great that we can meet here on this Asian podium today. I'm very grateful that too, and thank you very much for your wonderful organization.
Okay, thank you very much for Dr. Deboer's excellent presentation. 那这个德波尔教授，他其实真的就是一个
Dr. De Boer is the living history of industrial heritage in Europe. He has been dedicated to this field for over 38 years. In 2008, the Industrial Heritage Association was established. To date, the network is connecting 48 different countries with numerous networks located across the entire European continent. I would like to thank him for sharing his experience with us. He talked about audience research, dynamic preservation, for example, the dance performance. Let's work it out at the different heritage sites, connecting the European youth with the cultural heritage.
So please, the floor is yours. Please, Hasti. Thank you very much.
I thank you. Good morning from Amsterdam, everyone, and good afternoon for those in Taiwan, and good night for Lucy in Canada. Yeah, it's very late. And first of all, it's nice to see you all again, especially the friends and colleagues and VIPs in Taiwan. Although it is online, but I'm so happy to see you all again. And thank you for Professor Dr. Weilin for this opportunity. And although I have been working in cultural heritage for about 28 years, and I have given attention to industrial heritage, but Annie since the establishing of ANI, it really gave me a boost to go deeper into industrial heritage issues, especially in Asia. Because although I've been very lucky that I have an opportunity in my life to learn a lot from Europe and other West countries, because I live in Amsterdam, but my work is in Asia, especially Indonesia and Southeast Asian countries. So the nature of my work is actually to get lesson learned from the from the Netherlands, especially, or from the Europe, and I bring it to Indonesia and Southeast Asian countries. I would like to share with you what is my opinion about what Hildebrand has just shared with us about the industrial route. I would like to share this one. Yeah. Could you see it? Yes, okay. No, not this one. Yeah. Okay. So once again, I would like to share with you the lesson learned from what European countries have done in validate, sensitize, and celebrate their industrial heritage. And we in Asia, how do we do this in Asia? What can we learn from our friends in Europe? So about the European, I will focus more on the European roots of industrial heritage. And it's especially because I believe that in the International Youth Forum these times, that there will be a lot of youth, of the young people. So let's learn together. It's actually the European root of industrial heritage indicates transnational approaches, which consists of three things. First is selection strategies. Second, patterns of justifications. And third is interpretative approaches. So most of objects that include in the industrial heritage roots usually are technology and architectures. But we also can consider about constructions of industrial facts. They are invisible, concealed, forgotten, repressed, or erased. So that is more on the narrative of the immaterial part of the industrial heritage. And also, first is about the material and immaterial transnational linkages in interconnections. So this need to be adequately communicated. Hildebrand has shown a lot of efforts in European countries to link to each other. So we have to go beyond our national industrial heritage. We have to go to see beyond our borders. It becomes transnational or maybe international, because that is the strong character of industrial heritage. Second is the dark sides of industrialization processes and phases are appropriately represented, so that the world reflected in industrial cultural projects are not described as sanitized industrial heritage. I think all of us realize that industrial heritage, it doesn't always relate it to peace and progress. It also relates to the time when the war happened, occupations. There are prisoners of wars and forced labors. And this, especially for Asian contexts, are very related. And I think we should, as professionals, be able to put the whole histories into our industrial heritage roots, if any, or if we are planning to make the Asian roots of industrial heritage. Thirdly, it is very important to select objects or sites that are specifically Asian in characters. So they are not designated as Asian simply because they are located in Asia. But of course, we have to find out what are Asian characters, what are Asian specificities. I've been working with the cultural heritage movement of Asia more than 2 decades, almost 3 decades, in a lot of aspects of heritage, not only industrial heritage, but also modern architectural movement and other museology, archives, and I noticed and I realized that Asian cultural heritage movements are still struggling to find appropriate ways for conservations to realize also what are Asian heritage. So these three aspects that I want to share with you, what I have learned from the presentations of Hildebrand de Boer, but also from the industrial heritage movement in Europe. It's all these three elements seems simple, but actually in the realizations they are not simple at all. It might take a long time and a lot of efforts to define who we are, industrial heritage of Asia. But Annie, I think, has taken a very important steps to lead the move in Asia to connect all Asian countries to do these homeworks. So let's keep the spirit high. Let's work together and hopefully that we can find some answers to these homeworks. Thank you, Professor Wenli. That's my presentation.
For Hasti's very insightful view about what happened will be in Asia. And so here I would like to end our this panel, and thank you for our presentation from Dr. De Boer, and thank you for Hasti's comment. So we will move to the next section. Yeah, thank you very much for both of you.
谢谢线上的。
Thank you to our three speakers, and now we're moving on to session 3, panel discussion. So now we have the seminar of TICI 2022 has been approved. So we are going to invite Professor Guangzhong Li to lead a group of experts from Taiwan to have further discussions. And we also want to welcome our 3 international speakers to join us virtually. So now please be patient. We are going to set up the venue. Please bear with us. Thank you.
好，那我们欢迎
We would like to welcome the moderator of the session, Professor Guangzhong Li of National Donghua University. So now I would like to give the floor to our moderator. Professor Li, please.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and our honorable guests, Lucy, Husty, and Mr. DeBoer. Welcome to our to the third session. 我们这个非常
I want to express my appreciation to you all for attending the seminar. This is a very interesting session, so please allow me to give a brief presentation. So because the title is TICI 2022 Seminar, so our panelists will be able to go to Canada for the TICI 2022 next year. So the theme of our discussion today is related to the industries in Taiwan, especially landscape and reawakening the local community. And our focus will be on the cultural heritage of the coal mining industry. So please allow me to give a brief introduction and let me lay the groundwork for our future discussion. So next year, we will go to Canada for TICI 2020. In Taiwan, we are preparing a session in the TICI seminar, and we will meet with our friends from all around the world. So the topic is reawakening the coal mining landscape in Taiwan. So we will talk about the cultural heritage of coal mining in Taiwan as a landscape. How can we reawaken that? We want to reawaken the intangible cultural heritage as mentioned by Lucy, like how we can revitalize the memories and to instill in the new life or new linkage. Of course, we also have the tangible cultural heritage. How can we maintain it? How can we revitalize it? I also want to thank Professor Lin Xiaowei, and also I want to thank some of my good friends for helping me prepare for this session. And today, in addition to me, Professor Lin Xiaowei will also join us. Also, Mr. David Gong. He's the chairman of the Xinpingxi Coal Mine Company, and Professor Wang will join us later virtually. And also Professor Liu from Providence University, and also Dr. Xu, the Heritage Railroad experts. They are the panelists. Professor Lin will talk about a network. So in Taiwan, we not only talk about the context of the coal mining cultural landscape, we need to maintain it, preserve it, and revitalize it. We want to do it in a more systematical way. But in addition to coal, we also need to think about sugar, salt, and forestry industries. So how can we systematically establish the context? And we need to foster future exchanges that will be of critical importance. So Professor Lin will tell us a bit more about that. And Mr. Gong, I think David, our good friend, we all know that Xinpingxi coal mine is a wonderful site demonstrating the coal mine. So it's a good example of revitalization. And that echoes to the memories, because during the Japanese colonial period, we developed the coal mining industries. But if we go back to that period of time, we could see the connection between Taiwan and Japan. So Professor Liu will talk about Houdong, or the Pingxi line. And Professor Liu will focus on the Ruishan coal mine and Houdong. So he will talk about the change of the landscape. So it's not that we can revitalize the local community randomly. We need to follow the context. And finally, Dr. Xu will talk about the coal mine in Pingxi Line. This year marks the centennial of the Pingxi Line. So looking ahead, what else can we do? All these will be critically important. Because the topic of the session is about landscape, so please allow me to share with you the idea quickly. I know that people in geography have been talking about landscape, and people have all sorts of definitions. So whether we see it from the geographical perspective, or we know that some people say that culture is an agent, culture is a medium, or culture is a result. There are so many different geographies around the world, so we have diverse landscapes in the world. So among the discussions in the academia, so gradually in 1990s, people started to see cultural landscape as a new institutional tool for heritage preservation and resource conservation. So the organization of IUCN and ICOMOS, people started to talk about how to preserve the cultural landscape. Simply put, we can see cultural landscape is defined as the coexistence of man and nature, or the long-term interaction between man and nature. There are positive and negative effects. So, of course, we want to create more positive examples, and we want to form a virtuous cycle and to revitalize the local communities so that our natural resources will be sustainable. And there are several best practices or tools. For example, IUCN, in the past, they have designated the protected landscapes and seascapes, and people are all familiar with the World Heritage Cultural Landscape. And even for the FAO, they have the GIAHS, and even in Satoyama, they have an initiative to preserve the cultural heritage. So, you may wonder, no, we see them separately, but I think it's really difficult for us to combine the areas of culture and nature. So now people are talking about the culture-nature links. It is important not to draw a line between the two, but to find the links between the two. So IUCN and ICOMOS in 2016. So in the IUCN World Conservation Congress, we started to see the collaboration between IUCN and ICOMOS. Their focus was landscape and seascape. Also, a few years ago in India, during the 2017 ICOMOS Assembly, the World Rural Landscape Initiative was adopted. So, of course, in rural areas, there was nature and culture, and this is something we can work on. We need to think about the cultural landscapes, not just the living ones, but also the relics. We do see a lot of rural landscape heritage. So if we want to reawaken these heritages, we want to see not only the buildings, but also the culture. So when talking about globalization, or think global, or act local, I think a very important link is that we need to adapt to the institution of different countries. So what are the tools that we can use? So the Cultural Heritage Preservation Act of 2005 mentioned historic sites and cultural landscape preservation. For example, in Hualien, Fuli Township, Fengnan Village, the Chiare Cultural Landscape Area, it was designated a special area. Also, in terms of coal mine and jade, these are the mines. In terms of this kind of cultural heritage, we can also see them as cultural heritage. And also in Hodong or Pingxi Line, we use the concept of cultural heritage to look into the coal mine industry. So every stop in a Pingxi line can be seen as a core infrastructure of the industry to link that to our daily lives. And interestingly, in 2016, the Cultural Heritage Preservation Act was amended. So it mentioned the important systematical and complicated management or designation or registration. So for our legislature, it shows that for cultural heritage subject to 2 or more jurisdictions of competent authorities, the Ministry of Culture or COA should cooperate with the authorities to preserve these areas. So this is really important for us to think about. How can we preserve and reawaken the cultural heritage? And Article 17 also indicates the importance of the natural reserves or geoparks. So I think we started doing this kind of research. We started to look into the systematical landscape of coal mines in Taiwan. So we could see that in northern Taiwan, we have the several areas for the coal landscape. So we have Keelung, Taipei, and Hsinchu and Miaoli areas. So we have identified these potential sites. For example, people are familiar with the line from Pingxi to Houtong, even to Badouzi. These 3 sites are connected, and these are great potential sites. Even when we go back to Houtong, to Pingxi line all the way to Jingtong, you can see the upstream of Keelung River Valley. They are subject to the context of the landscape. So you can see the mountains and also the rocks and the mountain ranges, all of the river streams cutting the rivers, and people started to discover the coal mine and also the transportation route all the way to the manufacturing facilities. Everything is related to the geology of that community. So if we go back to the upstream valley, actually that could serve as a geopark for the coal mining industry. So our laws provides us a lot of opportunities to think about. So it means that we can use the concept of landscape to review the location. So it's not just an area in New Taipei City. Actually, the area may go beyond one city. We also hope that the central and local government can work together because we can get more opportunities. We need to be connected to the local communities because these may be the issues that the local residents want to resolve. And we also need to promote interdisciplinary cooperation. So now I'd like to invite our panelists to come up to the stage and take your seat. So please. So next, we would like to invite Professor Lin.
Thank
you, Professor Lin, for your warm introduction. In 2009, I participated in the coal country all mines study with Professor Lee, the moderator for the session. So it was quite an honor, and we've been friends for a long time. I will now give a brief introduction to the forming of networks of industrial heritage in Taiwan and what we've been doing in recent years. The title of my presentation today is Networking Industrial Heritage. The scope of industrial heritage could encompass the facilities, machineries, landscapes, settlements, in addition to what Dr. De Boer had mentioned, the humans' activities, the intangible heritage, what are the trends in the international industrial heritage community? This is the outline of my presentation today. I will talk about what integrated conservation is. I will talk about international networks of industrial heritage. Then I will move on to talk about cultural heritage routes in Taiwan. And I will end with introduction to ANI, Asian Network of Industrial Heritage, which was launched here in Taiwan, based in Taiwan. How we will discuss how we can connect people and create synergy. I believe only by connecting resources can we move forward. Here I have listed some charters, the Dublin Principles, the Taipei Declaration for Asian Heritage, and the RICA Charter. These all emphasize the ideas of in situ conservation, protection of our heritage. As you could see that there is increasing number of industrial heritage sites around the world. Currently, we are focusing on the authenticity, integrity, and systemic approach of the conservation of heritage. Many countries are forming industrial heritage networks, and the foundation for the networks is in fact laid down thanks to the researches and studies done by people who had gone before us. Of course, there are the ICOMOS Charter on Cultural Routes, the European Routes of Industrial Heritage 2008, and the Japanese Cultural Heritage Charter 2015. These have all laid down foundation for our achievements today. The movement started early in Europe. The European Council's European Cultural Convention defined cultural routes as the follows, meaning that they collectively promote leisure and cultural activities along with an European identity. So we have a lot to learn from our European counterpart. Cultural tourism is only a means to an end. The end is to promote cohesion, to build pride and identity, as the previous speakers have mentioned. The European route of industrial heritage was in fact, I shall say, initiated in 1999 with the regeneration project in Ruhr district in Germany. It later evolved into a huge network with anchor points, with thematic routes and regional routes. So, for example, at the anchor points, you have larger facilities, you have major museums, cultural creative parks. They are more accessible. There are transportation hubs, and there's currently 18 different thematic routes and 21 regional routes in Europe. The different sectors have included textile, mining, steel making, and paper making, salt manufacturing, energy, transportation, just to name a few. They reflect the different facets of the industrial development of Europe. Now I would like to show you some photos. For example, this one was taken of the Oberhausen gas meter. There's about hundreds of projects like this in the Ruhr district. The industrial conservation is connected with urban development and environmental beautification projects. Another example is the Duisburg Landscape Park. It is a World Heritage Site. Another very important bridge is the F16 Overburden Conveyor Bridge. It is currently an landscape park that attracts visitors from near and far. There are also factories such as these ones. They have been turned into living museums. that appeal to a wide range of audiences. So as you could see, the routes or networks have been expanding. You see how they're connected with each other with different themes and with tremendous success. In Taiwan, we have also launched a project, a national project, to rediscover and connect the different industrial sites. We're using the past industrial facilities and tangible as well as intangible cultural heritage as the foundation for the forming of such a network. We believe that it would become a vessel for the holding of the collective memory, the passing down of the technical knowledge. We have been focusing on 5 important selected industrial sectors: coal mining, oil, sugar, forestry, and salt making. And I have actually published a book on this one in 2021 on the 5 different sectors. If you're interested, please look it up. In terms of themes, you could see that in terms of, for example, with this one, the coal mining, you could see a list of different coal mines and cultural heritage, worker settlements, and industrial landscapes related to that theme. As you could see, the themes are listed on top, highlighted in blue, and the different industrial sites and tourist attractions are listed at the bottom. As you could see, that this is how we organize the information to be presented to those seeking to search the information online. And as you could see, that we also have the idea of the key points, which are the anchor points. And we have the venue points, meaning that there are important facilities, cultural halls, or museums located at these sites. And we have the routes as well, the networks as well. So for example, here I'm showing you a map of the research that we have conducted regarding the coal mining industry. We have identified potential anchor points, and we have also identified the venue points. The speakers who will follow me will talk more about the routes. We already have the routes already identified. We have embarked on the next stage, which is to expand the network and to connect more resources. And this is very important part, that how do we connect different agencies? So people often ask, what's next? This is next. We're connecting the central government, the property owners, local organizations, agencies, educational institutes, and the local governments, the 5 different agencies, to make it happen. In this process, I would like to talk about the Asian Network of Industrial Heritage. This is not just about Taiwan. Annie is about Asia. It's about connecting the heritage communities, enthusiasts, researchers, and experts across Asia. It is the only platform dedicated to international collaboration in industrial heritage in Asia. In addition to acting as an information hub, it also provides a stage through which Taiwan could display its research results to the world. Of course, it also organizes a lot of workshops, seminars, and international conferences. So it's also an agency that's dedicated to organizing many different events and programs. I believe that at the end of the day, industrial heritage hinges on our daily living experience. I think this has been emphasized in Lucy's presentation, and as well as in the Hildebrandt Associate presentation. They both emphasized, and as Hasti had also mentioned, the element of humanity, a human connection, and I think that's what we have in common. Thank you very much. Next, we would like to invite Mr. David Gong of Xinpingxi Coal Mine Company to share with us. Good afternoon. I'm David Wang of Xinpingxi Coal Mine Company. So now I would like to introduce the current project, that is the revitalization of Xinpingxi Coal Mine and the placemaking of Pingxi. So this is the outline. I will briefly introduce the coal mine, the venue, and also international exchange, the revitalization project, and our participation in placemaking. So Xinpingxi coal mine was established by Taiyang Company in 1965, and in 1985, the company was sold to my father, Mr. Gong Changyong. And then in 1997, we stopped mining the coal, and my father established the coal museum in 2002. And in 2003, our museum became a local cultural museum. So I would like to introduce the venue. So this is an aerial photo of the Shifen settlement. On the top, you could see the Shifen train station. So this is the place where people fly the sky lanterns here. And we have the coal mine site. So you can see, okay, it's lagging a bit. So now you can see by using aerial photography, you can see our site is closely related to the old street. We have 500 workers, and the transportation route was that the small train will go to the Shimedo, and then you can see we follow the highway all the way to the crate of the coal mine. And the size of the coal mine is about 500 hectares, and we use about 20 hectares of the land. And in the past, we had about 500 coal mine workers, so their lives were closely related to the community. So the photo was taken in 1980. It was an aerial photograph back at that time. So you could see that was the mountain, so all of the quarries, and our transportation route was that we just followed the track, the train rail. So you could see the change in the topography, and you can see the transportation system. And over here, you could see the Xinpingxi coal mine. So it's about 20 hectares of area. And you can see in the red part, that's the Shifen Old Street. And the blue part is the Shifen Waterfall Park. Due to the time constraint, I won't go into the details, so skip this one. In 1999, after we stopped the mining activities, so that was how the coal mine looked like. So it was really collapsing. So 2 years later, maybe after a typhoon, the whole site would be destroyed. So that was in 1999. But in 2001, my father, as well with some old coal mine workers, wanted to reawaken the site. So in 1998, a painter, Mr. Lee, went to the mountains and drew 14 paintings. So coincidentally, I saw his painting. And because these were very precious documents, so I talked to him. I got the copyright from him. So these were the precious paintings from Mr. Lee. And now you can see this is the present day. So we have organized some cultural and arts activities. So this is the site as it is today. As for our international exchange in 2012 for example, as you can see in 2012, during the Tiki Annual Assembly, we had a site visit. So in the past, we didn't know much about cultural heritage because I started helping my father back at the time. But in 2014, we started to have some exchanges with the Tagawa City Coal Mining Historical Museum because that was the first cultural heritage museum on coal in Asia. So in 2011, we signed an MOU. So actually, long time ago, we had our cooperation. So 100 years ago, this museum was listed as a World Heritage. So after the Japanese came to Taiwan, and they found that the paintings drawn by the painters were almost exactly the same as the technologies adopted in Taiwan. So you found great similarities between the painting and the actual photographs taken in Taiwan. So you can see the way they work and the comparison. The photo were taken 40 years ago, and these were the memories of the paintings. You could really connect them together. So you could see the coal mining site in Japan and Taiwan, the support, how to build up the support. Actually, they're all very similar. So you can see this is Tagawa City, this is the mountain in Japan, and this is the mountain in Taiwan. So the whole design were extremely similar. Then later, we were invited to attend the National Coal Mine Related Industry Seminar in Japan in 2019. So we had discussions with the coal miners in Japan. And we have a lot of stories to share, so maybe I can tell you more in the future. And the local mayor wanted to work with New Taipei City. Actually, last year, we actually wanted to invite the experts to Taiwan, but due to the pandemic, we had to suspend the plan. So you can see Mike Robinson. Well, because his father was also in the mine industry, so he came to our museum twice and gave us a lot of valuable suggestions. We also went to we went on a visit. 3 years ago, we participated in the Reawakening Project. So it was a project for revitalization. And after that, we started to conduct a stock take on our site. So we review the Pingxi line as well as the coal mining site. We looked at our transportation routes as well as the aerial photographs from different timelines. So in this plan, we gave a whole inventory of our situation, and we had a stock take on all of the machines, like the maintenance and also oral history and how to compare different maps. So we started to build up the system, and later we joined the placemaking initiatives. We hope that we should promote the biggest cultural heritage with our local community, because Pingxi is famous for the sky lantern and the waterfall. So we held many activities to attract the customers, the tourists. We hope that when they come to Pingxi, they can see the industrial landscape as well as the story of the coal mine. So it was 10 years ago. We didn't know what would happen, but we had a plan. We want to create something beyond the museum. We hope that the industrial landscape can be reawakened. We want to keep the story. We want to have a live demonstration to the tourists, so when they come to Pingxi, they can see what's happening. So I think that's quite similar to the concept of a geopark. So we told our story. So because of the mining industry, we saw the change in the typography and how nature restores itself. So you can see our storytelling and how can we connect that to the old street. So in the shared space, well, in the past, we had the coal mine, so we had a settlement. But later, when the mining industry was closed, do we still have the settlement? Not really. But now we have the Sky Lantern Festival. After this, how can we re-establish the connection between the coal mine and the settlement? So I think that's the purpose of our project. So you could see the design, and finally, actually, the tourists come here for the Sky Lantern. So we work with the travel agencies. They bring in foreign tourists. They come to us and listen to our stories, and then the tourists can fly the sky lanterns there. So it's a complete package. So you can see this is our park. We have some markets and music festival performance. So the foreign tourists come to our mine, they can listen to our story, and they also go all the way from the mountain to the old street. It's about 1.2 kilometers long. So we have some live music performance, and after going to our coal site, we provide a special dinner in the open area. So group by group, they could go and fly the sky lantern. So the local tours operators also help the tours set up the sky lantern, so you can see people coming from every country in the world. So you can see the sky lantern and also our site. So that concludes my presentation. Thank you very much.
谢谢龚总经理精彩的分享哈，我们矿区。
Thank you. That was Mr. Gong representing the Xinpingxi Coal Mine Museum and Coal Mine Park. Next, we would like to invite Professor Wang. He is from the Yunlin University of Technology. He is dedicated to research of Hotong Coal Mine. Our participants and those of you who are concerned about cultural heritage and coal heritage, good afternoon. I think we all have strong feelings today. We have international speakers and presenters from Taiwan. I think what we do is that we are opening up new areas and widening our horizons. I have learned a lot from Lucy's presentation, and I think that is quite similar to what I'm going to talk about. In the past, we focused more on cultural preservation, and Mr. Gong told us about how to reawaken the cultural heritage to revitalize the community and develop tourism. But one important thing is reconnect. How can we reconnect the heritage when the industries are gone, when the linkage is broken down? How can we reconnect the broken links? How can we reconnect that back to the lives? So I think that will be a very important idea. So today, I will talk about the change of the Hodong coal mine region. So what are the factors that impact the Hodong coal mine region? And in the post-production era, what are the other factors that may impact the local communities? And moving on, I would like to share with you some new concepts. That is, I just want to go back to what Lucy said in the very beginning. How can we recreate the new values for industrial heritage? Well, because we're going to publish the paper, so you can see the abstract. So I think this event help us warm up for the TICI 2022 seminar. I'm really hoping that next year we can go to Canada to have further exchanges with people from all over the world. So in my presentation, I will talk about the change in the landscape in Hotong, the factors, and I will go back to the mining heritage and its role in society in the post-industrial era. Whether you know about Hotong or not, actually, Hotong is a wonderful space. So I think Xinpingxi has a longer history than Hotong. So in the 1900s, we started to see the development. In 1914, we started to see massive mining. And in 1939 to 40, or all the way to 1964, it was a major coal mine in Taiwan. And in the past, we conducted a research. I think that was quite forward-looking when we researched Hodong, and also when we conducted the cultural heritage. We focused not only on the industry and production. I think what matters more is how it is related to the settlement. And I think the settlement is also linked back to the nature and landscape. So we conducted an overhaul or a stock take on the cultural heritage. So there are 3 circles going in all the way out. So we have a 2-phase research paper. So if you're interested, feel free to have a look. So Hodong, I think it's quite an amazing place. I think in Taiwan, it's really interesting. It has over 100 years of history in terms of its coal mine. And because of the development of the coal or coal mine, we continue to see new developments. But when we look back, so you can see the changes happening. But actually, I think one thing good about Hotong is that it's a very well-preserved site. So you can see Reisan Company provides the map in 1984. So this is a map of 1984. If we compare this to the current status, the red crosses shows the sites that are no longer here, but the rest is still well preserved. So I think one importance of Hodong in terms of cultural or industrial heritage is that Hodong has great authenticity and integrity in terms of the preservation, and I think this is one of the best examples here in Taiwan. I can't say this is the one and only example, but it is a very well preserved site here in Taiwan. So we have conducted the change of the landscape of Hodong, and we also published a paper. When we look back at Hodong, in terms of the manufacturing period, on the left, that's the changing factors in the manufacturing site. The first factor is the development of the coal mine industry, and because of the rising demand, we started to see new changes and new development and new facilities. And the second factor is nature and disaster. It has continued to change the landscape of the coal mine. The third is the factors of ethnic groups and religion. I think due to the change of governments, so from the Japanese colonial rule to the governance by the nationalist government, you could see people having different faiths or beliefs. And when we enter the post-coal mine period on the right, so we still see the nature, the natural or the factors of nature and a disaster. So we do have recorded some major natural events, for example, fires or massive storms that destroy the or change the landscape of the coal mine. But in the post-coal mine industry or period, I think politics plays a bigger role. So the Hotong Coal Mine Museum was established so that the cultural heritage was very well preserved in Hotong. Another important factor is the social and economic factor. In the local community, we have a very active local organization, and people are very enthusiastic about the preservation. Although they are not really changing the landscape, but more importantly, they have become a very important force of support. So I think through this research, we are trying to know that in the coal mine period and in the post-coal mine period, what are the factors? And as we know, we have set up the Hotong Coal Mine Museum. And because there are so many cats living in the area, so people would just go there to see cats. And I think so now people attach great importance to the coal mine as well as the cats there. So before the Hotong Coal Mine Museum, actually, the government wanted to establish a museum, but it didn't happen. So they just want to establish an in situ preservation. So that was a very good foundation for the preservation of the heritage. So under the mechanism of the eco park or eco museum, so we have the model of a core museum as well as the satellite museum. That is one major museum and other facilities driving the change together. So gradually, the museums have become more and more decentralized. That is, the core museum is not the most important thing, but actually the local communities would gain greater importance together. So what's the next step in the future? Actually, we have conducted some case studies on the museums in Taiwan, and we found that their model actually can serve as good examples. So networking and synergy will be key for creating an eco-museum. But how can we do that? So my conclusion here is that in the case of Hodong, people were talking about the registration or preservation of cultural heritage. Secondly, I think the focus is here. How can we reconnect the heritage to the local society? I think that will be very important. And the third one is the diverse community. How can we establish regional cooperation and establish new network with the local community? All these are important factors. So all these are. So that concludes my presentation. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Liu. Now we would like to welcome Zheng Hui as the next speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm really grateful for this opportunity to come here and have a quick talk with all of you. What I'm about to talk about really echoes with what Lucy had mentioned. I would talk about the Pingxi railway line, which was created to transport coal from the Pingxi mining pits to the transportation hubs. And the construction method, therefore, was relatively simple. After the coal mines were shut down, it was turned into tourist attraction because of the growing local cat population. However, in recent years, we have noticed that the collective memory had been lost because people were focusing on making the location very touristy instead of putting enough emphasis on the cultural aspect. As I said, this railway was established to transport coal instead of passengers. Therefore, its narrow gauge setup was actually a very primitive way of laying down tracks. I will talk about Houtong, Shifen, and Jintong, the three different communities that are connected by this coal railway. The new Taipei city government has invited the retired miners, and then they have organized a group of the local guides to serve tourists. A local memorial hall, for example, like this one, it's called the Vision Hall, had been set up in the local community, and we are in the process of restoring the coal washery facility. Due to time constraint, I'm not going to be able to show you all the photos. We have preserved the minor settlements, namely their dormitory. We have also set up an artifact exhibition hall. This gentleman in the photo, he is actually the person, the miner, featured in these paintings. This is the entrance to the old mining pit, and it's been restored, and people could walk a short distance into the tunnel to get a feel of the miner's life at the time. Here is how we introduce the miner's life and the hardship they had to endure, occupational hazards and injuries, occupational disasters. There, like I said, we offer guided tours. We also have set up a simulation tunnel to allow tourists to enter and feel the darkness and of the mining environment. You could see that here some guided tours are in session. You could see that the local people try to stay active. They engage in dance clubs. They engage in ballroom dancing. And here we have set up a sort of like a tourist train ride. This is a far cry from the real train that used to transport miners. However, it does get people a taste of riding on a narrow gauge train. And people who come to visit tend to have a great time. Now, I would like to talk about another site, which is Shifen, another town along the coal railway. Shifen is known for its mono-eye monk, which is a nickname that the local people gave to this locomotive that was introduced to the region during the Japanese colonial period. I'm showing you a few photos of the restored coal mine and the simulation tunnel and the hands-on experiential camps and workshops that the local people are offering to tourists. The washery here is also under restoration, and it also has come up with a firefly watching tour. It combines the local ecological environment with the train ride, which was an instant success. It also engaged in a lot of exchange program with Japan, the former colonizer of Taiwan, and lots of talent cultivation workshops. As you could see, that some photo shooting campaigns involving models, as well as sky lantern lighting ceremonies and activities. These are all the famous events that are taking place in Shifen. The next site, which is Jintong, which is also a town along the railway line. And here, their characteristic is that they have a women-only guided tour service team, and they have consolidated the local efforts and tidy up the local environment. Look at how this piece of machinery was completely broken down. However, they were able to restore it and turn it into an attract part of the attraction. You could see that all these women are in fact retired miners or spouses of the retired miners. They know the mining sites and the different facilities like the back of their hand, so they were able to give a really insightful tour with personal narratives. They also put on theaters like this, miners' theater. All the players are the retired miners and the local residents. So, after showing you these photos, I would like to give a conclusion. Sometimes we focus so much on the development tourism, but the actual essence of the heritage, which is the local memory, is lost. I think as we quote unquote regenerate or awaken the local communities, it's equally important to focus on the intangible memory aspect of the industrial heritage. And that will be all for my presentation today.
谢谢许医师哈，我们铁道这个专家给我们那个其实很鲜活的一些印象哈。那我们就还有一位。
We have one more presentation to go. He is getting ready online. He is Professor Xinheng Wang. He's waving at us. Looks like he's ready. He will be the last presenter of the day. I think his presentation is also related to what the board had already mentioned. He will talk about industrial memory as a medium for international communication.
好，我要去了讲报。好，等一下哦。好。好，这样可以看到吗？我的简报。可以，好，那这样听到我的声音吗？好，那各位贵宾，大家好。
Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Xinheng Wang. I'm from the Yunlin University of Technology. I will talk about industrial memory as a medium of international collaboration. We have been collecting archives, documents, historical photographs of coal mines in Taiwan. And my research team have been collecting old paragraphs, photographs, archival documents, maps, drawings, employee medical checkup, records, pay scales, related documents. This all started back in 2015. Back at the time, we engaged in a collaborative program with Sakubei Yamamoto coal mines. And so at the time, we were able to bring the paintings of Mr. Yamamoto, an artist and also a miner, to be displayed in Taiwan. His paintings are composed of simple images. They depict the life of miners, accompanied by description local folk culture. We also accompanied his paintings with the local paintings and the local photography works, just to name a few. And so this was what happened in 2015. In 2018, we launched the Taiwan Japanese Coal Mine Cultural Exchange Exhibition. This was done under the framework of Memory of the World, a general guide to the preservation of documentary heritage. It is mentioned that such heritage should promote the value based on the fact that it could become accessible, it could engage the public. So later on in 2017, we put on an even larger scale of the replicas of Mr. Yamamoto's paintings, the miners' paintings, and we also, at the same time, hosted the Taiwan coal mine photography and related objects exhibition along with the Japanese paintings, and it became a huge exhibition that attracted many visitors. I believe that this has created a renewed momentum for international collaboration between Taiwan and Japan. So we decided to create a platform. This platform connects the different cultural halls in the local communities with the aim to help the local cultural halls upgrade and take on new missions, which is to become industrial museums, particularly coal museums. So we have engaged in a lot of international platforms, international programs. This has given birth to platforms, and this also initiated a series of research efforts here in Taiwan, because Taiwan was colonized by Japan. So we have a lot of in common in terms of industrial heritage, even in terms of technical terminologies, technical know-how, and so on. So in line with this, we also became the Pinshi Railway Line also collaborated with the Heisei Chikuho Railway in Japan to become sister railways. So these are some of the examples of what we have been carrying out over the years. We have learned some valuable lessons along the way. Here is a picture or a poster of our current exhibition, which is about coal mines in northern Taiwan. We have learned that countries who seek to collaborate could focus on the industries where they share common history to create thematic exhibitions and events. And it was important to research and enrich the mining industry archive, which was the foundation for education, marketing, and international collaboration. This creates cultural narratives that enabled us to better manage and carry out cultural and industrial heritage governance. Due to time constraints, I will end my presentation here. Thank you.
谢谢新老师。所以
Thank you, Professor Wang. I think that connects back to Professor Dabor's mentioning of the twinning of sites. That is between different countries. They're establishing sister relations or twinning. So I think that's really interesting. So thank you very much for listening. Actually, our time is up. Because I think this is a daunting task because in an hour we have 5 or 6 speakers sharing. So
we have a few minutes to discuss. If you have any question or comments, please share with us. Lucy, do you have Mr. Dabu? 还有那个叫Tasty. Any comments?
I can comment.
Yes, please.
Yes, I find that this notion that was explained of a reawakening that will be, of course, focused at Tiki in Montreal, and all that was discussed about the reconnection was presented in a very joyful meaning by Dr. Deboer, but also by all our speakers that we just heard. I think that the notion of reconnection is very important and is more and more at the center of our work on industrial heritage. The idea to reconciliate the material heritage with the immaterial heritage, looking at both of these as two joined entity in one single whole forming meaning. I think it's really great, and the examples that we saw and the discussion that were made were very, very illuminating in that way. So thank you very much.
Yeah. Mr. Dabu, do you have any comments?
Please, and thank you very much for these wonderful presentations on the Asian network and about Taiwan. I must say, some presentator, I don't know exactly who it was saying, we look at Europe and there are many things we could learn of in Europe, but I would also like to turn it around, because I think in Europe we can learn very many things of what you do in Taiwan and in Asia and have done. It's impressive. It's wonderful projects which you presented, and so I think, and that's something which is our global approach. I think we can learn from each other and inspire each other, and I think you did a great thing today also in this insight. I feel very inspired, and I really hope to be able to visit Taiwan and to visit you once. And I would like to thank you very much for your hospitality. It was my great privilege to be with you today. Thank you very much.
Ms. Tasty?
Thank you very much. I've also learned a lot about efforts of Taiwan in industrial heritage today, and I hope that Taiwan can inspire other Asian countries, for examples, in this endeavor. We need to do together, help together, and exchange information experiences. I think, and we do hope that globally we also can connect through the events in Montreal next year, and it's not limited to the official events, but also to more cooperations among the countries. Thank you very much.
all of your encouragement, your comments, and looking forward to see you in Montreal, Canada next year. And also please come to visit Taiwan very soon. Thank you.
Before we end, I would like to invite our panelists to come up to the stage to have a group photo taken per the request of our organizer, because our design is to have all of the panelists be seated and have further discussion, but due to the time constraint, I would like to invite our panelists to take the stage and have a group photo taken. So now we're going to conclude today's event. I would like to thank our guests from abroad. Thank you for staying with us throughout the event so that we can have more exchanges domestically and internationally. So we started our event with a group photo, and now we'd like to end our event with another round of group photo so that we can conclude today's session. So now, our guests from abroad, and please look at the camera, give us your smile. So, Mr. De Boer, please turn on your camera. Now it's time for a group photo. Thank you very much. So, please give us your smile. Give us your thumbs up. Thank you. Mr. De Boer, we can see you. Is it the connection? Thank you very much.
Everyone online and everyone visits at scene. 非常感谢线上。
I'd like to thank all of the participants online and in this venue. I want to thank all of the participants and especially those of you who have participated from the very beginning until now. So one more round of photos. So please give us your thumbs up. Excellent. So thumbs up. Thank you very much.
Bye bye, bye bye. 谢谢今天与会。
Once again, thank you to all of the participants. Now the event is concluded. Thank you very much for your participation. Thank you.
See you again.
Take care.
Montreal.
Bye.
Bye, bye bye.